Today is November 2nd. It's the 307th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. Today is All Souls Day, a day on which the followers of the Roman Catholic Church and other assorted Christians in the West commemorate the faithful departed, a day to remember loved ones and members of the faith who have died. It's the third and final day in the celebration of All Hallows Eve, All Saints' Day, and All Souls' Day, which also, as previously discussed, coincide with the tradition of the Day of the Dead, of which today is the second day of the Day of the Dead. As the multi-day festivities of death and remembrance come to a close on this day, I'm reminded of the words of Ellis Redding, better known as Red in The Shawshank Redemption, who says, quote, "Get busy living or get busy dying. That's goddamn right." On this day in 1948, Harry S. Truman is elected president, much to the surprise of everyone who fully expected New York Governor Thomas Dewey to win. Truman is the incumbent president, having ascended to the highest office upon the death of President Roosevelt in 1945. But even though he's been in office for 3 years, Truman is still seen as a placeholder by many people in America. Governor Dewey is seen by many as the frontrunner, actually by nearly everyone with something to say about it. Truman is unpopular, and the Democratic Party is fractured, whereas Dewey is a strong candidate with the backing of a strong and unified Republican Party. Dewey is ahead in the polls. He's on the cover of all the magazines that matter, and the articles inside are all about the Dewey presidency and what to expect. One publication is so sure of the Dewey victory that they want to get the jump on everyone else. The Chicago Tribune prints the next day's edition before the polls close on this day, Election Day in 1948. The Chicago Tribune comes out with what becomes the most famous headline of their 150-year history, and probably the most famous newspaper headline of all time. Dewey defeats Truman. It's a big banner headline too, and the headline is blaring when the president-elect holds it up next to his grinning mug. Dewey defeats Truman. The day after Harry Truman is elected president. On this day in 1948. On this day in 1959, Charles Van Doren testifies before the House of Representatives Subcommittee on Legislative Oversight. Van Doren is a former college professor, turned game show contestant, turned Today Show correspondent, who is issued a subpoena by Congress to answer questions about his experiences on the NBC quiz show 21. The show 21 is produced by host Jack Barry and his partner Dan Enbright for NBC, and it features two contestants going head-to-head answering trivia questions. First one to 21 wins. It premieres in September 1956, and the first episode is a dismal failure. The contestants are idiots, and the show is just boring. The show's sponsor, Geritol, is none too happy. They're ready to pull the plug. Enbright and Barry need to make some changes, and fast, in order to turn the show around. So after that very first episode, they decide to cast for very specific personalities and backstories. Oh, and they decide to give the contestants the questions and answers and script the outcome of every episode to make sure that every episode is riveting. And that's what they do. They meticulously choreograph every episode, fix the outcomes, and the ratings as a result go up, but not quite as high as they hope. In late 1956, they have a winning contestant who's on a streak, Herbert Stemple, and he's about as telegenic as he sounds. He's a brainy know-it-all who does know it all, but once he gets on his winning streak, viewers lose interest in him and tune out. Stemple is not good TV, and the producers are under pressure from the sponsor to ditch him. So they cast around for a replacement and find one in Charles Van Doren, a suave, good-looking Columbia University professor from a well-heeled family of brainiacs. Van Doren and Stempel go head-to-head, and it's a ratings success. The audience loves Van Doren, and after a series of episodes that end in ties with Stempel, Van Doren wins. Well, the producers have him win. They make Stempel botch the answer to a question he clearly knows the answer to. What film won the 1955 Academy Award for Best Motion Picture? Like a good soldier, Stempel takes the dive and answers On the Waterfront. Van Doren is crowned champion and goes on a winning streak that earns him a ton of dough on the show, and when he's finally written off the show, losing to attorney Vivian Nearing, Van Doren segues into a 3-year contract with NBC, and eventually a spot on the Today Show as a cultural correspondent. There is no Today Show slot for Herbert Stempel, and he begins to think he got the short end of the bargain. He speaks out about the behind-the-scenes machinations of the show and how he was told to take the dive, and no one believes him. But then, allegations are made that the game show Dotto is fixed. Dotto is quickly canceled, which only makes people think that it might actually have been fixed. And then people start to reconsider what Herbert Stempel said about 21. Maybe it was fixed. When asked about the allegations, Charles Van Doren responds by saying, quote, "It's silly and distressing to think that people don't have more faith in quiz shows." But then the New York District Attorney's Office gets involved, and a grand jury is convened. 9 months of witness testimony, some witnesses admitting they were in on the fix, others clamming up, not wanting to jeopardize their newfound celebrity status attained from their game show appearances. 9 months, and the grand jury comes up with nothing. No indictments. But there's been a lot of press about it, and with the grand jury report sealed, there's a lot of lingering interest in the scandal. Not ones to let publicity opportunities go to waste, Congress gets involved, and a few representatives elbow their way into the spotlight, opening up an investigation into the quiz show scandal. Charles Van Doren is subpoenaed. He tries to hide from the committee, but the committee uncovers enough evidence that the game show 21 was all one big fraud, that there's no reason for him to hide anymore. Besides, his Today Show employer NBC is really leaning on him to testify. So on this day in 1959, Charles Van Doren, who previously said people should have more faith in quiz shows, admits under oath to the congressional subcommittee that he had in fact been given the questions and answers in advance of each episode, that the NBC show was in fact, and dare I say it, rigged. Technically, the fraud perpetrated by 21 producers Jack Barry and Dan Enbright is not illegal at the time, even if it is, in the words of President Eisenhower, quote, "a terrible thing to do to the American people." The Federal Communications Act of 1960 takes care of that, prohibiting the production of any televised contest or game with the intent to deceive the viewing audience. And yet, somehow, reality TV shows are allowed on the air. There are 59 days left in the year. On This Day is produced by me, Dave Schultz. Thank you very much for listening. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I really appreciate all the support for the show, both the listening, the downloading, the reviews left at iTunes. That is huge. That helps a lot. So if you haven't done that, please go ahead and do that. And all of you who retweet the show at On This Day Pod, again, that's at On This Day POD, or share it on Facebook /On This Day Podcast. I really do appreciate all of that. So if you're still listening, the answer is Marty. Talk to you tomorrow.